I know it's been a while now of radio silence, but a lot's happened since then. I received a lot of private messages about my situation. Most of you were very kind and urged me to seek additional closure. In the near 2 years since I began putting all this to paper, things have become far more strange than I could have ever imagined. Originally, I had posted about this just a few weeks after my father passed. Since his passing brought a lot of memories up for me about the house that I'd rather not have remembered. For the first year of my silence, I was plagued by nightmares every time I closed my eyes. I dreamt of things I didn't realize I remembered. Between things coming back to me and these nightmares, sleep became quite difficult, as I began to dread even closing my eyes. It affected my work and home life immensely. At the beginning of the second year, my wife decided that my ongoing issues with my past were taking over the present. She filed for divorce and moved back to her home state to live with her parents. After 10 years of marriage, and barely after a year of my father's passing, this was a difficult pill to swallow. So we sold our home and split up everything fairly and went our separate ways. Having no kids together, the divorce went through rather quickly. I ended up quitting my job at the time and started with an at-home position for a tech support company that let me make my own hours. I also moved back to my hometown to a very old high-rise apartment building downtown. It's the oldest living structure in the city I live in, so it's bound to have a lot of stories of its own. Since I moved in, I've experienced a variety of odd occurrences, which I'll post a little bit more about later, as I'm starting to think a lot of it might be relevant. Since I moved back, I've made a stronger attempt to be in contact with my mother and siblings more often. We're all spread out. My brother and sister have families of their own and busy lives, so it's sometimes difficult to get the chance to talk to them constantly. Recently, I decided to conduct an experiment of sorts. Other than what we all experienced together at the old house, we've never really discussed any of our personal experiences together. So I asked the three of them each, my mother, my brother, and my sister, to write down anything that happened to them there and send it to me in an email without discussing it with the other two. I also wrote down a lot more about what I remembered and saved it as a file on my hard drive. I decided to do it this way so that no one's recollection would influence the others. I thought I would start by posting some of the things I've remembered from back then. As I get the emails from my family, I'll include those in later posts. Here goes nothing. I guess the first thing I really want to get into is some objects we had around the house that caused a few notable events. When I was little, Cabbage Patch Kids were all the rage. Seriously. You can look into old videos on YouTube about people trampling each other just to get one during sales for Christmas. It's insane. My family didn't often have a lot of money, but we're still able to get one for each of us for Christmas one year, when we were all still young enough to enjoy them. At first, things were so awesome. We would take them wherever we went, and play with them together at every available opportunity. I mentioned in the last post that no one ever really came over to visit. So these dolls ended up being our way of having friends over. Sounds silly now, but we had some pretty vivid imaginations and it made the three of us happy. As time went on though, things definitely changed. Keep in mind, I slept with my Cabbage Patch Kid every night. I would not sleep without it. It was never out of my sight unless my eyes were closed. I remember sometimes I would wake up and it would be missing. I would freak out and look all over the house and find it in the most unlikely places. It showed up on the couch with the television on a few times, which I always found odd because usually I was the first person to wake up in the house. Other times, it would be sitting facing the front door of the house, or even the back door near that creepy laundry room I discussed in the last post. It wasn't every night. I don't recall it being any specific day of the week. It all seemed pretty random to me. Not long after finding it in random places, it would sometimes talk to me. My mom always called whoever I was talking to my imaginary friend. Being young, of course, I would argue that my friend was real. I don't believe I ever told her it was the doll I was talking to. I'll have to ask her about that after I get the email from her about what she remembers. At first, it was normal stuff about my life, the kind of things I liked to do, and how I felt about different members of my family. Of course, being that young, I was thrilled for anyone to be interested in my thoughts and secrets. So I spilled everything to this doll, whose name, by the way, was Aaron, according to the adoption paperwork that came with it. Aaron knew things I didn't even tell my brother about, and I rarely kept anything from him. Over time, things got a little more intense. I remember Aaron pushing me towards decisions I was pondering on at times, and even suggesting new things that needed to be done altogether. He would whisper to me late at night about my brother stealing toys from me, my sister breaking my things, and my mother and father always talking bad about me when I wasn't around. I took a lot of it to heart, of course. Why would my best friend lie to me? It was around the time Aaron began making violent suggestions. I locked him away in a toy chest in my closet. Never played with him again. I remember my mom asking me about it, me telling her that I was getting too old to play with a Cabbage Patch doll. Mind you, at the time, I was only about 6 years old or so. A few weeks later, I reluctantly decided to unlock and open that toy chest. I had the only key in a secret place in the bedroom I shared with my brother that not even he knew about. When I opened it, there were weird scratch marks on the inside. All the other toys inside were broken. Aaron was nowhere to be found. It's one of those things I'd forgotten about entirely until about a week ago. There's only one more event I clearly remember now, involving another toy. Not too long after I stopped playing with Aaron, my mom had gotten my brother and I a Teddy Ruxpin to share. My sister was deep into the Barbie phase by then, and it's all she even cared about. My brother and I, we played with that Teddy Ruxpin together often. We would listen to the tapes and watch it come to life, which enthralled us deeply at the time, as there was nothing else really like it. One day my sister pranked us and switched the cassette we had inside Teddy with a copy of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Naturally, my brother and I were terrified pretty quickly, but were too scared to even move until side A ended. When it did, we screamed and made a break for it. We wouldn't even go to our room until my mother had retrieved the doll and put it in her own closet. My sister admitted the joke later that day and showed us the cassette. Eddie creeped us out after that, though. We didn't play with him too much. When we did, we used him as more of a boombox anyway. We would just put music we liked in it and listen to it that way. We couldn't bring ourselves to ever listen to another story from him, ever again. About 4 months later, the three of us were in mine and my brother's bedroom, just sort of hanging out and playing board games, when all of a sudden, Teddy, from in our closet, starts talking at random. My sister pulled him out and set him between us. For the first minute or two, he seemed like he was telling us a story from one of the actual cassette tapes made for him. Suddenly his story took a turn for the worse. Somehow, 3 children that had the same name as we did were on some sort of adventure. One by one, the children were basically dismembered and eaten by a teddy bear deep in the woods. Listen to the whole story. Immediately, my brother and I glared at our sister, certain she was behind it. That's when she yelled at us about it being a lame attempt to get her back. That's when I started getting super nervous, and I noticed my brother was as well. Our sister grabbed Teddy and went to pull out the cassette tape, but there wasn't one inside of it. The 3 of us screamed until my mother came in. By now, Teddy had been silent for a few minutes. Mom refused to believe anything had happened. She said we must have been imagining things because she'd taken the C batteries out to use for something else the day before. Just as she opened the battery casing and showed us it was empty, Teddy said, "Ouch." Startled, my mom dropped Teddy on the floor. I remember him saying her actual name out loud and that she was naughty and needed to be punished, in a strangely pleasant voice. This time, even my mom screamed. She grabbed Teddy by the foot and ran outside to throw it in the garbage. By the time we all made it out behind her, she was dousing it with lighter fluid and setting it on fire. I remember all 4 of us just standing there and watching it burn as its eyes blinked and stared at us, its mouth moving constantly. I don't really remember what it said while it burned, but I do remember some strange loud-pitched sounds that made me think that maybe it was screaming. Well, that's all for now. I'll post more later in the week. I have a lot of things written down. Of course, I'll be including the information for my brother, mother, and sister as soon as I get it. To those that message me with kind words, thank you for giving me the courage to explore this part of my past. Hopefully, it will help me get the closure I need to get past it.